Hi, today I wanted to talk about my experience discovering Redbar Radio, my favorite guy, Mike David, and I often have the thought of just how different it is my kind of perception of the show now and how I see it compared to my first time seeing it, my kind of what is the word? First impression of it, right? And so today I wanted to discuss that because I think it is really interesting, and the way that Mike comes off is like a point of contention. Obviously, a lot of people talk about how they immediately like dislike him and then come to love the show, or they think this and that about like how they see him, and it the kind of phrase that you have to give it a year, right? And that notoriously Red Bar Radio is something that for a lot of people takes a long time to get into. But for me, I would say it was a bit different, and I wanted to give kind of the background on that, and kind of my own context with the show, because it's just interesting to me, and I figured I would rather put it on a video than just continue to think about it. So I consider myself still, even though I have known about the show for like 5 years now, I consider myself to be still like a new listener who discovered the show through YouTube clips like the ones that you're seeing here. Contextually, it's like when I was in high school, Joe Rogan, like in my mind, right, I'm like a Joe Rogan listener. Like I've gone back now and listened to the whole archives from the Melton Watch onwards, and then also a bit beforehand, like Mike's boarding school story and some of the more like the Takeover show. But mainly what I will do is I will go back to, I've done this like twice now, I'll go back to Melton Watch and I will listen through it and enjoy that, and then listen through all the way to current day, the current episode. And I've now done that twice, just finished doing that for the second time. And so I'm probably going to go back and enjoy Melton Watch for a third time, because I am a true worshipper. I am a true head, right? So how I discover the show is through Joe Rogan. And I consider myself to be like a Joe Rogan listener, and the ones before would be like maybe compound listeners. And then before that, I'm not sure necessarily how to categorize that. Maybe Melton Watch listeners, like maybe listeners he took from Melton, or I'm possibly skipping something really big in my head, like but just general listeners of the show if they're pre-compound. And then before that, in my mind, it's like what college radio, or like I don't even know those guys. Like I think of like really old listeners who get brought up on the show or whatever, right? But anyway, so I consider myself to be like a Joe Rogan YouTube clip era listener. When I'm in high school, Joe Rogan is something that I listen to, and my friends are also into. Joe Rogan is thought of really positively, right? And he is, his show is seen as like part of this frontier of like new media, that we're going to listen to things like Joe Rogan to get our information, as opposed to the news. Of course, the news or mainstream media is like considered poorly, and Rogan is considered overall really positively. A lot of my friends also get into like Brazilian jiu-jitsu and fighting, and I never got into that. Just not something I've ever been interested in, but still that was a point that made Rogan even more relevant, because obviously he commentates the UFC fights as well. So Rogan is something that is like almost a bonding experience for me when I'm younger, right? And it's something that I have like a positive kind of opinion of. And actually, like to this day, in order to fall asleep, I have to listen to podcasts. And that all started with like 2016, maybe even earlier, listening to Rogan when I would listen to it in order to fall asleep. And ever since then, every night I have to listen to something. Obviously not Rogan anymore, but I have to listen to something in order to fall asleep. Usually it's Redbar these days. And that started with Rogan. Now, something changed, and I'm out of high school now, and it's like maybe a couple of years on from that, and something has changed that I picked up on, and I believe it maybe has to do with the political climate in the United States, but I don't think that fully explains it. It's just that this made it quite obvious. It's that Rogan, I've picked up on, will have on a certain guest that has a certain, let's say, political ideology, or it doesn't have to be politics. It could be just a certain idea about how things are. And he will agree and be very agreeable towards them, especially if he is in the right mood. And then he can have someone who is like fundamentally opposed to that previous guest. You could have them on even next week, or, you know, not long after that. And he is going to then somehow be in full almost agreement with this new kind of guest. And to me, that really destroyed any kind of respect that I had for Rogan. It made me feel that he was not qualified to be the person having these conversations with all of these different guests, because it says to me that he doesn't like stand for anything. And I've never been like that politically engaged in that regard, or cared about what side it was, but I could pick up that these like heavy ideas, Rogan is presenting himself to have one lot of beliefs with one guest. And then I feel, in my mind, at this stage, it's not so much a corruption, but it's more so that he is just, his only allegiance is to keeping the show running smoothly. And it's causing him to basically contradict himself. There was some other small things, like I would say, like I never gave a shit about like how he treated Brendan Schaub, although that is really harsh, right? It's really harsh how he treats Schaub, but I never really cared about that because I kind of fundamentally agreed with his point in that clip. But I will say, like, sometimes, like how he treated Redban, like I felt like, yeah, he was unnecessarily harsh or like demeaning towards Redban. Like, I now know from, like, I understand, guys, right? If you listen to a lot of Redbar and you hear like how Redban is and his ineptitude and or whatever, like his flaws and his shortcomings, but Redban is fundamentally like not like a bad person, right? Like in that, like I know he false flagged Mike at one point. He's, you know, it's like it's out of ignorance, not out of he's no Dalia, he's no Santino. Anyway, right? So, but that was all secondary. The main thing in my mind that I've picked up on is that Rogan doesn't seem to really believe in anything and is really just going to say whatever to keep the conversation going. And I got tilted over this, and I'm now like, I guess, an anti-fan, right? Like, I'm not commenting on the videos. I'm not even really sharing this sentiment with anyone, but I'm like an anti-fan of Rogan. I don't like him, but I'm still listening, and I'm frustrated by this. So this leads me to go on YouTube and search something to the effect of, it might have been even like hate Rogan or hate Joe Rogan or Joe Rogan exposed, just to find something, to see if anyone else has a similar sentiment or something that I can like, you know, connect with in terms of anti-Rogan content. If anyone else is like feeling the same way as me with this. And that's when I come across like the Redbar clips page, right? So I'm not certain exactly which one of these videos it was. Just looking through, where before I made this video, I thought it might have been the first video in the red room, in this red box with Adam Curry or whatever it is, where Rogan had like had him on first, and it was really awkward. But looking at the timeline now, I'm not so certain. It might have been the one with what's he called, Everlast, where Joe Rogan shows him good from Jocko. It might have been something like that, and that is like my first kind of time seeing Mike and seeing his clips here, right? Now, so here comes the first impression, right? So I see Mike, and he, in my mind, like the first thing that strikes me is that this is something that I agree with. Like, I'm on board, but this is never going to work, right? Like, I agree with the point, but the way you're going about it is not going to convince people. And the reason why I thought that is because the way that Mike presents, I guess, a fool, or he presents information about a person, is not in keeping with commentary YouTube's strict standards for we report the facts and XYZ, this, that, and the other, and we have clear evidence of this, and we've caught this person in the act. Largely, it's around like hypocrisy, or it's around, you know, like them violating some kind of agreed upon social rule that YouTubers enforce upon each other, or people online enforce upon each other, in order to catch someone out and expose them, so to speak, right? Mike does not follow that. He shoots from the hip. He uses his intuition, and he is prepared to comment on something without all of the facts, and he's very open about if it's a fool and he doesn't like them, he is not giving them the benefit of the doubt. You know, like, it doesn't mean lying. It means that if he doesn't like Rogan and Rogan does something where it's possible that it was like a foolish activity, or whatever, it's positive or it's negative, like, he's going to possible that it's a negative thing, right? He is not giving him the benefit of the doubt. And it's like a commentary YouTubers, or like the ones I think of, the most of this is like a YouTuber like The Right Opinion or whatever, right? Like, where it's like a 4-hour video, right? And it's going XYZ, or like the H-Bomber guy, like, big video at the start of the year exposing the gay guy who was copying all his videos from all the other people, right? It's like XYZ here, and we're presenting it like a court document. And Redbar is the antithesis to that. It doesn't mean that he doesn't use the information. Like, if you think about the time where Chris D'Elia was exposed for, his many indiscretions, right? Like, yes, Mike does look at the actual reports and the evidence, but it is, first and foremost, Mike hates Chris and has a bad hunch, and had a bad hunch about Chris for like a decade, right? He'd written a rap song in like 2010 or 2012, right? Talking shit about Chris and picking up on some of the themes that would carry through negative characteristics about Chris D'Elia, right? And so Mike is therefore primed to have a certain interpretation of it, right? So that's my initial thoughts, is that yes, I agree with this and this needs to be talked about, but the way you're going about it, they're just never going to, what I was looking for, I guess, or what I thought I wanted, was someone to do an XYZ breakdown. Here's where Rogan said this, and here's where he contradicted it in this one, and Redbar just simply isn't that. But I'm like intrigued. I'm definitely not a fan at this stage, and that's why I said I had a very different kind of first impression to the people that say, oh, immediately I hated Mike or whatever. It's like, no, I definitely didn't, but I was also not a fan. Now, in terms of him, like, stylistically, right, Mike is well-dressed, was well-dressed then. I think then is just after his, like when he has just done away with, like, hype clothing, I think is what I'm looking at, like, maybe 2019 or 20. And he's just done away with hype clothing. And, like, you can even see from some of these, like, clips around 5 years ago, it's like, I guess, elevated basics or whatever, like how you would describe his style at the time. He's wearing the cap and he's just got like, this is pre like massive like cardigan, Summer of Joy, whatever, right? I'm pretty sure, right, that I've got it lined up in my head. So what happens, like my first impression of him here is, like, contextually, like, I'm from Australia, and believe it or not, before watching Redbar, I was not aware of the stereotype or the idea about someone being culturally Jewish, right? Like, that was just not something that I grew up with in terms of the media I'd consumed and stuff. I was not aware of the idea of a person being culturally Jewish. I thought of Judaism as a religion, just like Christianity or Islam, and I didn't understand, like, looking at Larry David and thinking of him as anything other than, like, a white guy, right? And, like, so I guess I just wouldn't have got it if I watched Curb. I did. I watched these kind of shows. Like, I watched Seinfeld, I watched Curb, I watch shows that have, like, culturally Jewish people, and I just take it for what it is and find the situations funny, I guess, right? But one type of person that I did grow up around a lot is Greek people. Right, there's a lot of Greek people in Australia, and when I first saw Mike, I thought he was Greek. He's like tan-skinned, got these like really dark features, and he's going grey, but it's still at this stage it's not like fully grey. And I just think, yeah, he's got this olive skin. It's like, this is like a Greek guy, but American Greek guy. And that's what I'm thinking when I first see him. And in terms of his style, like, clearly had put thought into it, but I couldn't, again, put my finger on it. And with the way he wears his, like, facial hair and stuff like that, like, I thought maybe this is a hipster, but it's definitely not a hipster in the sense of, like, I don't know what you'd say, like, Portland or whatever, like 2010 Portland, like earlier 2000, like a hip, you know what I mean, like a hipster, like a something you'd see on Pinterest or whatever, like that. Like, but this is like a leftover. In my mind, it's like a Greek guy who is like a leftover from the hipster movement. Um, and because of how he kind of like, depending on the clips in terms of where Mike lands politically, you could definitely, if you just go off first impressions, you could think that he is all the way on the right or all the way on the left or whatever, because he will make fun of and go into a bit. And the key thing, like one of the things I love the most about Mike is he is super, super confident to be misunderstood. He's so okay with being misunderstood and understand, like, having the knowledge that a person's first impression might be completely off from where he actually lands, or yeah, so in terms of politically, I'm thinking like possibly this guy is like lands somewhere on the left, but is also okay with making fun of like all this other stuff, just from my first impressions, right? That's what I'm thinking, and that I guess tied into this is like a Renaissance hipster, or like a hipster who is like kind of carried the flag onwards, and there's been some progression from what that used to be, and he seems to just not care, and that is borne out in the fact that at the time I think the channel had 9 or 10,000 subscribers. I'm not entirely sure, not a lot of subscribers, but obviously great production value, really high quality, like knows what he's doing in that regard. And so it's just a guy doing his own thing. So from there, I listened to a couple of the clips, and I'm not like hooked, right? Like I don't even know if I subscribed to it. I just left it there because I was kind of frustrated, right? Like okay, it's like this Rogan content. It's like, yeah, I agree with the message, but I don't think it's going to work, so I'm going to move on. However, of course, with how YouTube works, it then gets Redbar into my recommended, and I must have gotten recommended one of his more maybe accessible clips from an outsider perspective. In my mind, I'm thinking it's maybe the one where he makes fun of like Thomas Middleditch, because that's like a super, in my mind, like super accessible, because it's making fun of Middleditch for basically being like a sex freak, right? Which, like, from that like Puritan kind of angle or whatever, it's kind of more in keeping with something that you might find on the rest of YouTube. Again, though, it's from like Mike's unique perspective, of course, but it's definitely more accessible in my mind. It might have been that, but just looking at the different videos now, it might have also been this one, because I was also aware of Brandon Wardell. It might have been to do with him. But it's not really so important. What I do remember, though, is in my mind it was a much more accessible clip, and then from there I was fully hooked onto it. And I remember I was playing a certain video game at the time, and I remember just binge listening through to every single clip on his channel, and from there it's like, I need to understand what this is, because this is something different. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about, because comparative to I guess how I think about the show now, it's just something I like think about a lot, is my first impression of him. And I feel like if I made a show like Mike, it would be really interesting to me, like how I'm first perceived. And it's just interesting for me to talk about something like that. Thank you for watching.